throw. One-on-one. Davis has it. Touchdown. Carolina wins. Carolina is the Coastal Division champion. Javonte Williams to the left of Howe. He'll send him out into the flat right side. Howe looking, standing tall, lets it go. Man there. Touchdown. Touchdown, Carolina. The pistol. Jackson behind him. Hands off to Jackson. He tried a jump pass, and it's intercepted. Surratt intercepts it. Holy cow, Carolina's going to win. And off to Javonte Williams again. Pops it to the left. Javonte leaps over a man, crosses the 50, trucks over a defender, spins by another. Goodness gracious, he's down to about the 15, and he did absolutely everything in one carry.
Here's the shotgun snap to Aguilar. Drops back. Pressure coming. Aguilar floats it up. Incomplete. No flags. Head on back up the mountain. Carolina wins it in double overtime. Loftus out of the shotgun. Throws to the end zone. Incomplete. Incomplete. The bell belongs to us. Carolina wins it. 47-45 in double overtime.
Bernard fields it at the 26. Heading to the far side. Gio at the 35. Gio, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Gio is going to take it for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
All right, guys, welcome into another edition of the Heel Tough Blog Podcast. Another Friday night. Maybe you guys are leaving your local high school stadium and you're getting ready for the Tar Heels matchup tomorrow with the Pitt Panthers in Chapel Hill. Well, we're here to do just that for you, tell you everything that you need to know as we head into what is a crucial matchup for Carolina here tomorrow. I mean, it's the one that probably decides their season, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that here later on in this edition of the podcast. But look, Carolina through 5 games, 3-2. I think if you told Tar Heel fans that they were 3-2, I don't necessarily think a lot of people would be too surprised. I think we all felt like that game against Duke, even heading into the season, was going to be a toss-up. But again, just like every other year, it's the matter in which the Tar Heels have gotten here. If you would have said, hey, they're 3-2 and their losses are the first game of the season against Minnesota in a close one and a close loss to Duke, I think a lot of people probably take that. But the problem is that Carolina started the season. They went on the road and won against Minnesota in their place and then took the next 2 as you expected. But since that point, Carolina has suffered a disgusting loss at home to James Madison where they let up 70 points. And then a heartbreaker last week against Duke where they were up 20-0 and they completely collapse and lose 21-20. And so now here we are, huge game against Pittsburgh. And I guess the starting point would be, where are you at confidence-wise with this team? Because I feel like a lot of people are probably down on this group, but I'm interested to know. Maybe there are people out there that feel like this is still a group that they have hope in. I'd love to know why. I'd be very interested to see some of those comments. But, I mean, from your perspective, where do you stand with this team after the last 2 weeks and as they prepare for Pittsburgh?
Yeah, if you're still upbeat and optimistic, then take off the Carolina Blue sunglasses and have a dose of reality. This team's coming off back-to-back losses. And while last week's was on the scoreboard close, they're both embarrassing in their own ways. Like the James Madison loss, we know what that one is. The Duke loss was a three possession lead midway through the third quarter, pitching a shutout, mind you, a week after you allow a 70-burger, and a team got back in the game, won the game by running the football on you, and running all over you, wearing you down. And that shouldn't have been the case last Saturday. So, Carolina now enters probably the make or break point for this season. and that was kind of on the table last week. And it's definitely on the table now this week. And so it's going to be interesting to see, because you could argue this is the best team Carolina has seen so far this season. It's the best offense they've seen so far this season.
Definitely.
And so there's going to be a really stiff test ahead of this group. And we'll be interested to see how Carolina responds, because last week, the first half, you could make the argument Mac Brown, still had the locker room. They were playing for Mac Brown. I don't know if that's going to be the same case this week after what happened in the last 22 minutes or so in Durham last week. And so the answer to that question will tell us how the rest of this 2024 season is going to go in Chapel Hill.
Yeah, and I mean, look, everything that you said about this Pitt team that's coming in here is 100% correct. The only reason that you even remotely think that Carolina has a chance in this game is because this is the 18th time that the two teams have met. Carolina's won 12 of the previous 17 matchups. And Carolina all-time at home in Chapel Hill against Pittsburgh, they are 7-0. That is the reason to believe that Carolina can get it done. I don't think it has anything to do with this year's team. It's more about the history that is on Carolina's side. Mac Brown, 2-2 against Pittsburgh, but the last two he has taken. So that's, I guess, another reason that you could feel somewhat confident, because, there's no way around this. They are so much better than anybody Carolina's played. Maybe you think because of how good Duke was defensively, you would put them ahead of them. I wouldn't. I think Duke is a team that is probably destined to maybe finish with 8 wins, but that's a product of their schedule. Pittsburgh, I get it. They haven't really played anybody outside of West Virginia, but they are absolutely destroying teams. As you mentioned, this offense is on a roll. It's the big reason why this team is 4-0 right now. They're coming off a bye week, which probably helps them as well. They will be well rested. They'll probably be as healthy as they've been since the first game of the season. And they'll roll in here averaging 48.5 points per game, 522.8 yards of total offense, which is 6th in the country, 330.3 passing yards per game, which is 5th in the country. Cannot believe that there are 4 teams that have more passing yards per game than that. 192.4 rushing yards. So this is an incredibly balanced attack. It's a group that's going to be able to attack Carolina in a multitude of different ways. And it all starts with their quarterback, Eli Holstein, who has done a great job of fitting into Cade Bell, their new offensive coordinator system. He might be one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the entire country so far this year. He's thrown for 1186 so far, 12 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's also ran for 189 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. So he's going to be able to hurt Carolina in a majority of ways. Then you've got Desmond Reed, who is one of the best all-purpose backs in the country. This dude's averaging 166.3 scrimmage yards per game so far this year. And again, he's first in the conference with those numbers because he has played one less game than a guy like Amarian Hampton. So you may look at Amarian scrimmage yards and say, well, he's ahead of him. That's because Reed's played in 4 games. He's been amazing. On the ground, he's rushed for over 300 yards. He has 189 yards receiving as well. This dude is a monster, and Carolina's got to be prepared. It also doesn't help that while he's in the backfield, you'll also have to deal with Rodney Hammond Jr. potentially coming back and playing a role for this team. That's the guy that hurt Carolina on the ground a year ago when the Tar Heels played up there. So a lot to deal with in that backfield. And then you look at their receiving core, 4 wide receivers that are over 170 yards and at least 1 touchdown. So this is a group that spreads the ball around a lot. You can't just take one guy away because somebody else is going to be able to step up and have a good day. Gavin Bartholomew is the tight end. He's having a very solid year as well. Hurt Carolina in last year's matchup. And their offensive line, probably the weakest point of this group. They've struggled a bit, especially in pass protection, but it doesn't really matter when you're putting up those types of numbers. So when you look at this group, I think it resembles a lot of what we saw from Carolina's offenses in times the last few years. And Holstein's a guy that I don't think coming into the season we really thought much of. Hell, he wasn't even supposed to be their starter when most people were going through and predicting what their starting lineup would look like. A lot of people thought it would be Nate Yarnell, but this dude is a diamond in the rough that they found transferring in from Alabama. And it's one of the main reasons why I am extremely concerned about this offense going up against Carolina's defense in this game.
Well, the first thing you got to do is give Pat Narduzzi credit for changing the way that he runs his program to play a more modern style of football, and they're reaping the rewards and the benefits from that. We're used to seeing Pitt play 21-17, 24-21 football. You can win that way, but I mean, we saw last week with Georgia and Bama. Like, that game was a shootout. When those two teams play, it usually is a shootout. This is an offensive-driven sport. It's an offensive-driven game, and Pitt had to get modern on offense, and that's what they've become. You've just got big play potential all the way around. They've got backs that can, kill you on the ground in the passing game. They're physical. They're going to be able to wear Carolina down over the course of 60 minutes. They've got one of the better tight ends in the country, which is going to cause, I think, matchup problems for Carolina in the secondary. And then you've got a quarterback that is playing. You could argue he's playing at a higher level than Kenny Pickett was playing when he took Pitt to the ACC title game a few years ago, which is a scary thing. I don't think Pitt is as good as collectively as that group was a few years ago. The ACC is better than it was when they made the title game. You also don't have division, so this isn't me saying that Pitt's going to be in Charlotte, but Holstein is playing at that high of a level. And for a defense that has had their fair share of issues the last 2 weeks, in comes the best offensive team they've played so far, which spells trouble for a team trying to find its footing here in October.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm going to tell you, this defense better come out ready to go. This is not one of those games where you can say, hey, we're off to a slow start here because we're starting at 12 o'clock. No, it doesn't matter. You come out slow against this team, you're going to be destroyed. I mean, this game will be over within the first half of the first quarter. So this is on this group to come out ready to go because, this is – I mean, look, with Holstein, is he probably putting up numbers that are comparable to Kenny Pickett? Oh, certainly. But the thing that you do have to remember is that it is against some weaker opponents to start the year outside of that game against West Virginia. Not taking anything away from him, but in terms of him being on the same type of level that Pickett was, we'll monitor that as we go throughout the year. Doesn't matter, though. Carolina made Alonzo Barnett III look like he was a Heisman contender. What could they possibly do against this guy who is off to a better start? Barnett, when he came into that game, was struggling. Carolina seemed to unlock something in him. But, now it's all about being able to get pressure on Eli Holstein in this game because their offensive line has been rather susceptible. You move over to the defensive side of the ball, and, it's not a horrible unit, but it certainly isn't as good as I think they want their defense to be, and we've seen them be in the past. Allowing 25.5 points per game, 342 yards of total offense allowed to opponents, 231.8 through the air, 110.3 on the ground. Now, again, because of the level of competition outside of West Virginia, I think the running number might be a little misleading. Carolina's rushing attack will be one of the best, if not the best, that they've faced so far this season. So that'll be a different test for them. But the passing yards numbers, that is not misleading. This secondary is really struggling again. This is the same thing that we've seen with them. If you remember Narduzzi's early teams, man, their secondary would let up a ton of passing yards. And I think this is a group that's built very similarly. They tried to go into the transfer portal They got two guys, Rylan Gandy. Actually, no, Gandy, I think, came there out of high school. I might be wrong on that. Gandy is the guy, I think that's a holdover. And then Rashad Battle is the guy on the outside that transferred in. And so both of those guys so far this season, they've let up big plays. Donovan McMillan, the safety, has also been a guy that's let up a lot of big plays. He leads the team in tackles, which is great, but he also leads the team in missed tackles with 8 through the first 4 games. And so very similar to some of the issues that we've seen with Carolina's safeties, he's had issues tackling, and that is something that Carolina will hope to attack. The strength of this unit, definitely the linebacking core led by Kyle Lewis, who's having a fantastic season. He's a guy that plays in one of their hybrid linebacker spots, and he pretty much does everything. He's a guy that can rush the passer. He has 10 pressures already so far this season, one of them a sack. But he's also a guy that can drop into coverage and has done a pretty good job in coverage. So he will do a range of different things that Carolina's got to be prepared for. Their edge rushers, pretty solid. They've got 2 guys that do a good job of getting pressure on the quarterback. Nate Matlack and Rasheem Biles are the 2 guys to know going into this game. The one thing that is weird is that their interior defensive line, not really as good as it's been in the past. And that's an area, I mean, they have produced some amazing guys from the interior. Of course, Aaron Donald, this past year, Elijah Clancy, who is really, really good. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see if that's a group that struggles the way that they have out of the gate. And that could be another area that Carolina could look to attack, especially with their running game. Those guys in there have not been great defending against the run. So I think that's a little bit of good news, is that while their offense is pretty potent, you saw it in the West Virginia game that this is a defense that can be exploited. It's just about having the right guys to take advantage of it.
Well, the biggest thing I think is just staying on schedule, staying ahead of the chains, not committing, pre-snap penalties that put you behind the sticks. We've watched some of the games against Cincinnati, West Virginia. You can put some big plays up on this defense. They had to change their style of offense because they were not as good defensively. They can stop the run, but you can throw on them. This is a game that Jacoby Criswell is going to have chances to make plays with his arm, and he's got to make those plays. And so this is something that Carolina has adjusted very well to under Mac Brown, is being able to exploit the defense. We saw what Drake May was able to do his 2 years as Carolina's quarterback. I mean, Carolina scored over 40 points in Chapel Hill a few years ago, and I think they scored, was it over 40 against them last year? They've been able to score against Pitt's defense. And so I don't know if it's fair to expect Carolina to put a 40 burger up in this game, but if they hold up front, they protect Jacoby Criswell. It doesn't matter if they block for Amarian Hampton or not. He's going to run someone over. He's going to gain positive yardage. If this offense stays on track and stays ahead of the chains, they've got a chance, I think, to put up enough points to keep Carolina in the game and maybe with a chance to win the game. And frankly, I think that's kind of all you can ask out of this offense is just give yourself a chance, because you just don't know what you're going to get defensively. But make no mistake, this offense has to bounce back, because they were downright pathetic in the second half last week at Duke, never putting the game away, which should be a motivating factor for Chip Lindsey and that whole offensive side of the football. So it'll be interesting to see what Carolina looks like, but I do think there's a scenario where Carolina puts up enough points, enough yards to have them in the game in the fourth quarter. And if that's the case, it'll be hard to be upset about that if you're a Carolina fan.
Yeah, I mean, it'll give you a chance to potentially win the game. Because, again, this is one of the biggest tests that Pitt has had so far early in this season. I mean, for Carolina, you're starting to feel like, I guess you consider James Madison a test and you failed it. But, I mean, you've had Duke, a game that you lost. Hopefully you can learn something from that. And you've also had a game that you won against Minnesota. That was a test for you as well. So I think that's the one thing that could be an advantage, for this offense. You're right. I think last week, the biggest issue for them last week I know a lot of people are going to say, well, it was Jacoby Criswell not being able to make throws. And that was certainly part of it as well. But when you're being blitzed constantly on the most important downs of the game because it's third and long, it's obvious passing situations, man, you got to do a better job of winning on first and second down. That's a big part of what this offense has to do better in this game than what they did a week ago. If you cannot get push up front and run the football in the second half, you're not going to win this game. You're not going to win any game because your quarterback is going to be under tremendous pressure. That's why James Madison was able to blitz him. That's why you saw Duke be able to blitz him. I mean, when you send 6, 7 guys at somebody, yeah, it's pretty much impossible to say, hey, Jacoby, we want you to step up into the pocket and make a throw. Well, there is no pocket. So I get it. A lot of people are frustrated with the sacks and the amount of pressure that has been on him having to throw off his back foot. But it's real simple. You have to be able to win on the first 2 downs in order to prevent you from being in an obvious passing down situation, which we've seen way too many of here in the last 2 weeks. You move to the special teams for Pitt. Pretty solid. Ben Sauls off to a strong start as a kicker, 7 of 7 on his field goals so far this year. Caleb Junko struggling a little bit as the team's punter, very similar to what we're seeing on the other side with Tom McGinnis. And Desmond Reed, dangerous if they use him as a punt returner. He has returned 1 punt so far this year, and it went for a 78-yard touchdown. I don't know if they're going to use him as their primary guy moving forward, but if they do, then that's certainly something that Carolina is going to have to be aware of. Let's move to the Tar Heel storylines for this game. And the first storyline is the exact same one that we had last week, because this is the most important thing to figure out heading into this game. What is the mindset of this team, especially coming off that type of loss after the way that you lost to James Madison, and with the fact that this is a 12 o'clock game? Because Carolina, they have to be ready to go immediately in this game. With a team like Pittsburgh that's going to want to turn this into a track meet, if you're not ready to go and you come out of the gate sluggish, there's a chance you could be out of this game extremely early. So this team has to come out motivated, and honestly, they have to play with a little bit of desperation here.
Yeah, if this group isn't pissed off, it tells you all that you need to know about their competitive spirit. Back-to-back losses. You're coming off losing to your rival for the first time since Mac Brown returned for a second stint in Chapel Hill, in a game that you basically handed them in the second half. And so, yeah, desperation is the exact perfect word, because it's do or die for Carolina on Saturday. And it's not do or die to make the ACC title game. It's do or die to make a bowl game and to keep this program above water and to keep it in a positive standing with Mac Brown's, tenure more than likely coming to an end. And so, and this team better get used to playing at 12 o'clock. We know the next week they play against Georgia Tech at 12 o'clock.
Yep.
There's no reason to believe moving forward they won't be playing at 12 o'clock more often than not the rest of the year. It's homecoming. So I think there will be a quality crowd behind them, ready to cheer them and bring some life and some energy into the stadium. But at the end of the day, man, it comes down to them and them executing stuff. And so we're going to find out if this team can pull together during this, during another in-season slide, or we're going to find out if, like the last couple years, if this in-season slide is going to send the season into a downward spiral they're not able to recover from. And if that's the case, it's going to be a long rest of the season, and it won't be a fun one. Carolina wins tomorrow, they'd be in position to make a bowl game and still maybe threaten to win 7-8 games, because you would feel different about some of the games that are kind of question marks right now.
Yep.
If Carolina loses the game, really outside of hosting Wake Forest later in the season, even going to Florida State, there aren't many wins that'll be on the schedule. So it's why tomorrow, even though it's the first weekend of October, feels like do or die for Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, I put that was one of my other headlines here. This might be the last gasp to save this season, because if you don't win this game, you're really looking around at some of the other games on the schedule and you're saying, okay, next week against Georgia Tech, do we really think that we're going to be able to beat that team? Couldn't beat them in our good years. Doesn't matter that we're hosting them. Do we really think they find a way? Probably not. Okay, the next week, then you're going on the road to Virginia. Couldn't beat them at home last year. They're playing better football this year. They seem to be fighting for their coach, Tony Elliott, to make sure that he remains in place. You brought up Florida State. Man, you can think whatever you want about Florida State. You still have to go back to the fact that Carolina historically is horrible against them. And Matt Brown has never beaten them. He is 0-10 all time going against the school that he played for. So then you're talking about Wake Forest. You're not guarantee you, especially if you lose this game, there is no chance you're going on the road and beating Boston College. And then NC State at the end of the year, which, I mean, look, maybe you could find a way to win that game because of how bad that team has been defensively. I find it hard to believe that that team isn't going to find a way to at least collect themselves and win 7 or 8 games. Which would mean that they're probably significantly better than you by that point in the season. So this game is massive, because if you lose this game, especially if you lose this game because this team just comes out and puts up a ton of points on you and you have no resistance, I don't see how this team recollects themselves. Like, if you lose this game by like 20 points, maybe even more than that, 3-4 possessions, I mean, it's hard to envision this team collecting themselves back up again. I think at that point, you've just completely lost the locker room, and it's just trying to limp to the finish, which is very sad considering that you will just then be at the halfway point of this season. So, yeah, they need to lay it all on the line. This first half better look like what we saw last week. That's what you're hoping for. But then it comes down to, can this team play the right kind of complementary football in the second half of this game? Because that's where it really matters. This team can come out and start fast again, just like they did last week. And guess what? It isn't going to mean anything to us, because we will know, okay, you started fast a week ago, and what happened to you? This team needs to show up on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball for 4 quarters. Does that mean that you're going to put together a performance like you put together against Minnesota? You're going to find a way to shut this offense down completely? No, probably not. You're facing one of the best offenses in the country. But at least give yourself a hope in this game. And if you can play that complementary football in the second half, if you can run the ball well, if you cannot get gassed and be out of position like you were on the defensive side of the ball last week, then I think you've got a chance to win this game. And really, that's all that we're asking for.
Yeah, I find it hard to say that they can play a complimentary game, because they haven't. And almost
well, they did last week. It was just a negative complimentary game where both sides decided to just not show up for the second half.
And I mean, and you know, you've had back-to-back weeks with a punt block, so you got to worry about that on special teams. And so right now that answer is no. And this is where I was mega wrong about this group this year. I really bought into, okay, they know they don't got an NFL caliber quarterback. They've got to play as a team to win. And because the defense after the first couple of weeks has been what the defense has been for the last decade, it has been this offense has to play a near perfect game for you to have a chance. And that's not going to happen with Jacoby Criswell. We both like Jacoby. He hasn't been the reason why they've lost the last 2 weeks, but it's hard for them to win with him with the way that they've played the last 2 weeks. And so, and I think this is just the wrong opponent. I think for you to maybe play that like the Minnesota game, that was how Carolina was going to win the game. They weren't going to go up on the road and put up a 30-burger. And I think this is a game where I think Pitt's just too good offensively for you to try to win this game 24-21. Like this is going to have to be a game where Carolina's going to give up points. We know that. You got to be able to score points, and so I think the answer is no. But can you get back to playing that style of football? Because you could beat Georgia Tech the next week, or you could win some of these games the other way if you're playing that way. And so you got to get back to that. And tomorrow's a chance for them to take that step back in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, look, maybe asking them to play a complimentary game is too much. My thing is just show us the effort on both sides of the ball. And look, I'm not saying that anybody's loafing it, but I mean, the second half, like you got worn down. You were at a position. Maybe it's more be fundamentally sound on both sides of the ball. And look, man, if Pitt just makes plays, if Holstein is really just, fitting it into tight windows, if they're just finding ways to, catch jump balls and stuff like that, that's fine. It is what it is. I'm not going to complain about that because this is a team that might just be really good offensively. It really means for this offense, you've got to be really damn good. In terms of Jacoby, look, I think there's a chance that he can be that guy for you. But the biggest thing that you're going to have to do is if you're wanting him to succeed at the level, it's not going to be the level that we saw from Sam and Drake. We just have to accept that. But if you want him to be a guy that can lead you to victories, which I think he's capable of doing, then you have to do a better job of protecting him. Like you've got to do a better job on first and second down of run blocking to take some of the pressure off of him. That's the thing. He's not a guy that's carrying this team to victory. It's just not going to happen. Can he make the plays necessary to win you games? Yes, I think that talent is there. We've seen it from him. But when he's having to throw off his back foot every single time that he's dropping back in the second half, he's not that type of player, man. Like that was Sam's game. Sam was a guy you could throw all sorts of pressure at him at the college level, and at times he would just make play after play. But we've seen it with guys with Drake. That wasn't necessarily his strength. And now, especially with Jacoby, it's just not in their game. So, yeah, this group, they've got to be much better up front. And if they are, then I think this offense can be good enough. And, yeah, just show me enough fight defensively to have some hope. The other thing that would help, and when I talk about fundamentally sound, the number one thing that I'm talking about when it comes to that, it starts with penalties. You cannot take these stupid penalties that have cost you over and over again. Last week, going in with a chance to potentially score, go up 24-0, you commit a holding penalty, and then you have an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty on J.J. Jones for who the hell knows what actually happened. Never got a replay of it. And instead of 1st and 10, you go to 1st and 35, and that drive over right there. Those things just simply can't keep happening. And it's every single week. Since the first game, you were tremendous in the first game against Minnesota. I don't know what the hell has changed since then. That was a road game in a Big Ten environment with a team that felt like they had a chance to be competitive this year. And you somehow found a way to commit 3 penalties in that entire game. The rest of the season, if you're committing 3 penalties in a quarter, we're considering that a good showing because that's the point that it's gotten to. Way too many pre-snap penalties. The unsportsmanlike, don't even get me started on those. Like, I got to be honest, especially last week, what the hell were you celebrating? Like, there's nothing to celebrate, especially in a moment like that where your team just takes a penalty and you're a veteran, you're a senior. So it comes to discipline. And again, we've been saying this since we have started talking about these issues this season, and we've said it in years past too. When these guys commit these penalties, take their ass off the field, sit them on the sidelines, because that's the only way to learn. And I don't care who it is at this point. It does not matter if the guy is having, on the defensive side, if he has 7 sacks in the game, you sit him out. If a guy on the offensive side of the ball has 31 receptions in a game, 7 of them touchdowns, he makes a mistake, sit his ass on the bench, because that's the only way these dudes are going to learn. I don't care if I'm a fan and I don't know what I'm talking about, as JJ Jones likes to say. Bro, I may be a fan, but I sure as hell know that that's a stupid-ass penalty to take in that moment that cost your team a chance to put the game away when it was on the line against Duke. Matt,
And look, as much as
come
the
on.
players are the ones committing the penalties, it's just as equally a coaching issue because there's no repercussion for their actions. And look, Mac Brown talked about penalties every time he talked in the summer. That was something that was being emphasized and stressed and worked on. And if guys committed a penalty, they were running. If they committed multiple penalties, the whole team was running. I don't believe that because if so, this is some of the worst disciplinary action I've ever seen because it didn't do anything. We got into the first game, and yes, like Carolina played a clean game. Also, 2 Power 5 opponents on national television. Referees tend to kind of swallow the penalties in that game and just let the teams play. After that game, I mean, it's just been all downhill ever since. I think Carolina's like 131st in the country in penalties after the first month of the season,
Hold on, let me see.
which
I
is
got it.
absolutely dumbfounding. And so, and look,
128th, so much
yeah,
better.
128. When we knew there were issues when Des Evans committed 2 penalties on the opening drive of a game and didn't get taken out of a ball game. That simply put, man, serious programs, that doesn't happen. And so for Carolina to win, they've got to commit less than 5 penalties a week. And that's a hard thing to ask out of this group with the way they've committed penalties left and right. And this is a trademark of Carolina football under Mac Brown, is they aren't disciplined enough to win football games. And they're not tough enough to win football games. Tomorrow they have a chance to rewrite that narrative, and we'll see if they're capable of putting together a clean performance against the best team they've played so far this season.
All right. Well, we move on to the keys to the game. And the first one for me is there are going to be big play opportunities. The thing is that not only have the Pitt corners given up yards, they have given up big plays at a premium. Rylan Gandy is allowing about 27 yards per reception. So the big plays are going to be out there. This is an offense that, especially this year, more than any other year, because you saw at times with Sam and especially with Drake, man, this team can methodically move the ball down the field because when you needed your quarterback to make throws, he was able to do it. When you needed to pick up tough yards with your running back, you were able to do it. And, I mean, Amarian, I think, for the most part, is trying to do that. But this is one of those games where when the big play opportunities are there, you have to hit them on the offensive side of the ball. If you hit a couple of those explosive plays, I'll say maybe a little bit, maybe a few of those explosive plays down the field, especially in the passing game, then you are going to have a chance to win this game. The opportunities are going to be there. We've seen them the last few weeks, but this offense at times just hasn't been able to take advantage of them. It's a must in this one.
Yeah, the issue last week was that when they needed big plays, they just weren't in rhythm because the offense completely came to a stall in the second half. The week before against James Madison was you didn't need 3 or 4 big plays, you needed 6 or 8. You're asking too much out of your quarterback in that situation.
Yep.
If you can, and I'll reemphasize this, stay ahead of the chains, run the football, and be able to set up a deep, the play action deep balls to JJ Jones or whoever, and then you're asking for 2 to 3 shots. If Carolina can capitalize on those, even if they don't got to be touchdown plays, but they got to be 30, 40-yard gains that change field position and the outlook of a drive, put you in a position to score. And it's going to go a long way for Carolina to win this game because they're going to have to score points. And I think they can methodically move the ball up and down the field against Pittsburgh, but I do think whichever team is more explosive will ultimately win the ball game. And so, this is the 3rd game with Criswell as the unquestioned starter. Chip Lindsey should be getting more comfortable in what he likes and what he doesn't like.
Yep.
This should be the best game plan that we've seen put together so far. And we've seen the receiver step up with him at the quarterback position. We know what 28's capable of doing in the backfield. You've got tight ends that are capable of making plays as well. The opportunity is there for Carolina to put up points, put up yards, and do it in a very explosive manner. It comes down to execution, something they haven't done very well the last couple of weeks.
All right. Key to the game number 2 for me, create turnovers. This is an offense that is going to be incredibly hard to stop, especially with this defense. I just don't know if they have the tools to be able to do it. I am incredibly concerned about Caleb Cost. And you look at the best game that Caleb Cost played this season against NC Central. What did he do? He created a turnover. He created the lone interception that Carolina has this season. They have been a little bit better. They have fared better in terms of forcing fumbles, 4 forced so far this year, which is tied for 18th in the country. You have to be able to create some turnovers in this game because this offense is just too much of a machine. And that's the best way to take them out of rhythm. If you can't stop them from putting up yards, which this group has just not proven that they can do at times in the last 2 weeks, then the best way to do it is to simply take the football away. It hasn't been the moxie of this defense under Mac Brown. We've been begging them to create more turnovers, and it just hasn't happened. But in a game like this, that can be the key to turning this game in your favor, especially because it's going to get the home crowd behind you when you create those turnovers.
Yeah, at this rate, that's when the defense takes the field. I think there's really 2 outcomes: either they give up points or they force a turnover. There's no in between. And you need to force turnovers because this defense we know is going to bend. You got to force turnovers so the dam doesn't break. The big plays and the chunk yardage overflow and overwhelming to the point where they're putting up points left and right. And so it starts up front. Carolina needs to put pressure on Eli Holstein, have to make him play from a muddy pocket, have to make him make some throws that he's maybe hasn't had to try to make so far this season. And then it comes down to capitalize on him making plays on the football when they are there to be made. And so we'll see what it looks like. I think Jeff Collins knows where he is defensively. And I think he's the type of guy that he's so aggressive. If they're going to go down, he's going to go down swinging. So I think you'll see him try to dial up the blitz and put the pressure on Holstein to see if he makes a couple of mistakes. And yeah, if Carolina can force, I'd say 2 turnovers, and give this offense a short field, it really changes the potential outcome and the outlook of this game. And so we'll see if they're capable of doing that. It ultimately starts up front, and then your corners making plays on the football.
All right, last key to the game. I mean, you probably could tell what it's going to be considering how animated we got about the discipline. I mean, for the love of God, can you please not take anywhere close to the average that you have this season of 9 penalties in this game? Pittsburgh is not the most disciplined team either. That's the one thing that you got going for you. And so what it means is that if they're going to take penalties and you don't, that's going to be a big advantage for you. They're taking 7.5 per game, which is tied for 100th in the country, 71.8 penalty yards per game, which is 104th. So this is a team that's going to come in with those issues as well. You've got to do a better job. If you are the more disciplined team in this game, that is going to give you the opportunity because, again, neither one of these units are performing good enough for you to continue to have these types of problems. In years past, there were times, especially on the offensive side of the ball, where Carolina was able to overshine some of those discipline issues. This year's team is simply not good enough to do that. And that's why in this game, you need to find a way to keep those penalty yards from adding up, keep the amount of penalties from adding up, and give yourself an opportunity against a Pitt team that could commit those types of penalties.
Yeah, the message needs to be from Mac Brown and the coaching staff. You're not good enough to win committing the penalties you've committed the last 3 weeks. That's why we are where we are. It's kind of like, in basketball where, Sometimes the team can only turn the ball over 8 to 10 times.
Yep.
To turn it over more than it's going to cost them. Penalties aren't turnovers, but they impact drives. They change field position. They matter just as much as a turnover at the end of the day. And so, simply at this point, I just want some accountability. And I don't care if it's a veteran, if it's a freshman, whoever. If you commit a stupid penalty, you're getting taken off the field. And you're going to sit there, and you're going to get yelled at, and you're going to get coached up, and then we're going to put you back in and hope you don't screw up again. And so, yeah, I mean, the thing is, and we know this with this team, when the penalties come, they come in bunches.
Yep.
Like when it's like a snowball, it's like an avalanche. So if Carolina comes out in the first quarter and has 2 to 3, pre-snap penalties, whatever it is, or they got personal fouls or whatever, then I think we'll get our answer. But if they can come out and put together a clean quarter, a clean half, then maybe they can keep their head above water and only commit 4 to 5 penalties. I think the more disciplined football team, as much as any other aspect, is going to win. And if Carolina can limit their penalties in front of their home crowd on homecoming, maybe it gives them an advantage or two on a couple of drives that help them win a ball game.
Yep. All right, we move on to our predictions for this game. I'll let you start out. What do you see happening tomorrow at 12 o'clock on ESPN2?
Yeah, I know there's going to be a football game played. I know there's going to be points scored, yards gained. Unfortunately, and I hate saying this because Carolina's wearing my favorite uniform that they wear, the all blue helmets, blue tops, blue pants. I think they lose. I think Pitt's legit. I think there's a scenario where Pitt's the third best team in this conference. With the way that they can just score the ball, the way they can move the ball on offense. Pat Narduzzi is going to get that defense better as the season moves along as well. And so I think Carolina competes. I don't think Carolina lies down, but I do think they lose. I think Pitt wins 38-28.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's not really much reason to believe in Carolina right now. There shouldn't be, especially with what you've seen the last 2 weeks. This is a team that has always struggled with 12 o'clock games, and that was in seasons when they were good. And so coming into this game against a team that looks like they might sneak up on some people in the ACC, I do think that there are plenty of reasons to question this team. But the one thing I will say about Pitt is outside of West Virginia, I'm not crazy about the schedule that they've played, thinking that they have proven a ton just yet. Not saying that they're a team that should be taken lightly, not saying they're not a team that could win 8 games, but this is still a team that is beatable, especially because of that defensive side of the ball. Man, this is it. This is the last gasp effort to save what is going to more than likely be Mac Brown's last season. And it should really be this simple for someone in the football program to say to these kids, Mac Brown maybe isn't in the room when you say it. Do you really want to send Mac Brown out this way? Do you want to be a team that goes out 4-8, maybe even worse than that? Maybe you don't win a game the whole rest of the season. Well, if you don't, you better win this game, because there are not a ton of opportunities for you guys moving forward based on what we've seen in the past and what some of these teams are looking like in the rest of this conference. You are 7-0 against this program all time in Chapel Hill. And there have been times where they have rolled in here and they have been the better team, and you found ways to pull out victories. This has to be one of those times. You've got to dig deep, and you've got to take everything that you possibly have and put it into this game, because this is the one that matters. You win this game, like you said, you could still win 7, possibly even 8 games, but at the least you are on track to make a bowl game. You just have to get 2 wins the rest of the way this season. That's not that difficult to do. You lose this game, it's pretty much lights out on this season. I think these guys know that. I think that this is a team that will be able to take advantage of this Pittsburgh team. And damn it, I'm going to believe in y'all one last time. If you lose this game, the only other game I will even consider picking you guys in outside of the state game, because I'm never picking them. Never. Will never happen. I don't care how good they are. Is the Wake game. I think Carolina wins because I think it is going to be a bit of a track meet. I think this is a game where you're able to hopefully run the football in both halves. And if you do that and put this team in third and short situations, I think that works to their advantage. I think Carolina gets it done in a shootout, 34-31 over the Pitt Panthers, and at least saves something this season. Regardless of what happens, we'll have you guys covered, of course, on the website and everything like that. Couple of things that I did want to update really quick before we get out of here. First of all, the injuries. I know a lot of people are asking. I'm going to be honest. I think going into this game, Kamen Rucker is truly questionable. He could play. He cannot play. They meet with the media on Monday. After that, practice is shut off to the media the rest of the week. Nobody else meets with them. The only time that you're able to talk to anybody associated with the program is on Tuesdays when you talk to the players. So, and they're not really going to give you anything in terms of injury updates or whatever. So we have no idea whether or not Kamen Rucker is active for this game. If he is, man, that's huge, especially with him potentially being matched up on their right tackle, Ryan Baer, who has allowed 16 pressures already so far this year. And keep in mind, that is to below, you've got a couple of group of 5 schools and Youngstown State out of the FCS that they have gone against outside of that game against West Virginia. So that could be a huge opportunity for Carolina. It could go a long way if he's able to be out there, but we have to wait and see. Darwin Barlow is the other guy we'll be keeping an eye on, questionable as well for this game. He, of course, has not played since the first week of the season, and Carolina didn't even use him really that much in that first game. So it'll be a waiting game to see on those guys. One other thing that I did want to point to for this weekend, Carolina tweeted this out the other day, that they will be accepting donations at several campus locations during Saturday's Tar Heel game day to help those affected by Hurricane Helene in Western North Carolina. Guys, if you have not seen the devastation that's out there, every time that you think that it can't get any worse, it does. The photos from some of these towns that they're just now getting to, like Chimney Rock was bad as it was. Now they're getting to these other towns that are higher up in elevation, that are much smaller, and the devastation is honestly worse. It breaks my heart seeing the stories of some of these people that have lost everything and in some cases have lost loved ones. If you can donate, please do. Go to at Go Heels on Twitter. It should be on the Go Heels website as well, and find out how you can, where you have to go to donate and what exactly they are looking for when you go there to donate. They also have a link, if you go to the Twitter page, that will take you directly to the North Carolina government page where you can donate to hurricane relief. And of course, at WFNZ, all week we have been promoting all the resources. We have an article on our website that you guys can go and check out. I'm actually going to retweet it right after we finish this edition of the podcast so that you guys can see how you can go and help these people out. They need us in this time. Some of you guys may live up there, or some of you guys may know Tar Heel fans that live up in those areas. And it's just, it's horrible that what these people are going through, and it's going to take years, and even for some places, it will never actually recover from this. But again, we here at the Heel Tough blog, as well as the podcast and everything, we continue to send our thoughts and prayers to everybody up there as they try to recover from this and continue the process that is just so difficult with the issues that people are having in terms of getting into these locations, getting out of these locations, struggles with food and nutrition, water, all these types of things. So any way that you can help, please do. So that wraps it up for this edition of the podcast. Guys, make sure you head over to the website, HeelToughBlog.com. Everything that you need to know about this game against Pittsburgh, that's going to be up there later tonight. Always like to get the podcast done so that we can then put the podcast at the bottom of the page there for you guys to be able to read. But again, we'll keep you up to date throughout the morning on all of the latest news when it comes to Kaman Rucker's availability for this game, as well as some of the other guys, if the Tar Heels have other guys that pop up on the injury report. So, plenty of great information in there, a little more on the keys to the game, more in-depth team breakdowns, all of that stuff for you guys to check out. When the game is over, we will have the recap. It'll be up later in the evening, of course. As we always do, we'll be sitting there watching games afterwards, but there will be a little bit of time for me to hopefully get started on that. We do have a big Met game as well for us tomorrow as they get ready to begin the NLDS. But still, I will make sure that I have something up there reacting to this game that Carolina has to play. And then, of course, throughout the week, whenever they update the injury statuses, any other news tidbits that are coming out around Tar Heel football, I will keep you covered on all of that stuff. Tar Heel basketball, some big news today about Carolina moving the scrimmage from Asheville back to Chapel Hill. So we'll have all the information on that. It was a move that we knew was coming. We were just kind of waiting to see when it would actually happen. So we'll have all the information for you guys on that front. And Carolina's got a huge recruit that is on campus this weekend. And it was one that was not supposed to be coming to campus. He was supposed to be going to Alabama. So make sure you head over to the website, check out which top 10 recruit in the 2025 class is on campus this weekend for Tar Heel basketball. And we will monitor that situation for you guys if anything significant happens. So the best place where you can go to get all of your Tar Heel football and basketball news and opinions is the Heel Tough blog. So once again, that shuts it down for this edition of the podcast. I want to thank Josh for hosting with me. I want to thank you guys for watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.